Hard question. What's your favorite Bruce song?
I would say that's incredibly hard song. Hard question.
This is not about either one of us. This is not about the charts. This is about Bruce Springsteen. And these are the songs that he wants to work on right now.
I saw her standing on her front lawn. I think, you know, it may be a boring answer, but yeah, the guitar, just because that was so foreign to me. I'd at least, like, I've spoken before, I haven't sang a whole lot, but I understand the concept of singing. You know, I've been a fan of music and singers, but the guitar, I remember holding it in my hands for the first time and trying to wrap my fingers around the right strings for the chords, and it just feeling like completely alien to me. And it was such a humbling start where I was really like, I have no idea how in 6 months I'm going to be playing anything that sounds good at all. And but like anything or any skill, it's just time and repetition, you know. This is how the story goes. He recorded Nebraska on, I don't know if it was 1953 or 1954 Gibson J200. I met him for the first time in London. I went to go see him perform, and we spoke in his dressing room, and after the show we spent a lot of time together at this party he had at the hotel with him and the band. And I got home from that show back in California, and I got a message from someone that worked with him saying, hey, you know, Bruce wants to send you something. I said, okay, here's my address. And he said, all right, you just make sure you're home when it gets there. I said, okay. And what arrived is a 1955 Gibson J200, which is the closest thing he could find to, yes, his guitar that he recorded the record on. So I learned to play the guitar on maybe the nicest guitar that, you know, anybody's ever learned to play the guitar with, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you a little story. When Bruce was little, he had a hole in the floor of his bedroom.
I think John was like such a steady hand, you know, for Bruce, and at that period in his life, and, you know, has continued to be. Yeah, I was really lucky, you know, to have an actor like Jeremy portraying John. And I think Jeremy's always in search of truth, and I think he saw me, you know, a young actor, undertaking this this very large task of portraying someone like Bruce Springsteen, and so Jeremy instantly felt very kind of protective and caring, you know, for me, for Jeremy, and I think those feelings of care and protection, you know, bled into, and appropriately so, in the way that John is sort of this this bodyguard, not only for Bruce's work and the integrity of his work, but also for his well-being. You know,
Bruce is a repairman. And what he's doing with this album,
pretty surreal. Hasn't quite sunk in. I feel incredibly lucky, and I also just genuinely cannot believe that it's happening and that I'm here in this movie. I mean, it was amazing. He's, you know, risky to meet your idols, I would say, and there, you know, there was definitely times where I thought maybe I don't actually want to ever meet Bruce. Like, maybe I could just be in this movie and never meet him because I was so terrified. But he is such a gentleman, a genuinely, like, such a gracious and generous human being, and he is so normal and nice. And I really can't say enough how brilliant he is as just a person. So I feel like it's the best case scenario.
It wasn't intimidating for me. I imagine Jeremy Allen White or Jeremy Strong might have a different opinion. You'd have to ask them. But I loved having Bruce around, because even though I'm not making a documentary, I wanted to align as close to historical record as possible. Authenticity in all of my movies is incredibly important. But when you're making a movie about America's most authentic artist, it has to be authentic. And who better to answer all of my questions than Bruce himself? So I loved having him on set.
We didn't rehearse. We had met a couple of times before, kind of going through the production office. And, I met him, Scott and Bruce all together in the first night. So it was kind of thrust into that experience. And then my first day on set, we were shooting in the Colts Neck house. And I showed up and Scott kind of went, "Hey, so I don't like to do a lot of rehearsal. Jeremy's in there right now and the camera's rolling. Do you just want to go in and start the scene?" I was kind of like, "Okay, yeah, like sure." And that first take was not good, but it's a nice way to break the ice. I think Jeremy is such a deliberate and disciplined performer that he was always on. He was always locked in. He was always ready. And that made it very easy for me to kind of just come in and play against that. It's like we didn't really feel like we had to find it together because it was kind of all there. And it also felt like, when we were working together, Scott is very good at designing the environment. So it does feel like you're the only people in the room. And that's very rare in, I think, film sets in general, but especially like films of this scale where you're kind of feeling the pressures and the size of things. It always felt very intimate and grounded and present. So I really enjoyed the process of not even having rehearsal. I don't think rehearsal necessarily would have helped us get anything else out of it because we were always kind of dropped in and right there with each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's some parallels, I suppose, that could be drawn, but we live in such different worlds now. I mean, but yeah, I think what was interesting to me and what I've dealt with a little bit in my own life is like the public's perception of you, and then the truest version of yourself, and how there is a bit of confusion there, especially if you're going through a period of strain or anxiety or depression like Bruce was, where maybe you're not as certain in your sense of self as you might have been otherwise. I can see like the way that the world is viewing you, or even more importantly, what the world expects of you, how you could get into kind of like a, I don't know, a difficult pattern or something like that, and so yeah, I've felt a little bit of that. I've certainly felt some of the pressure of that kind of like, what's next? How do you follow this up? What's going on? And I've also been in search of that kind of like work-life balance, which I think Bruce was in search of and still is, and a lot of artists are always, and a lot of people, forget artists, a lot of people are always like in search of that kind of balance. And but I differ in this way where I'm very lucky. I have a family. I have two young daughters, and Bruce didn't have that yet, and that's something that's sort of like instantly grounding and can kind of tell you exactly who you are.
Yeah, this was an incredibly challenging experience. Nebraska was introduced to me through my father, to whom I've dedicated this film. My father passed the day before I started shooting the movie. And then in the last few days of production, last week of production, while directing the Born to Run sequence, and a sequence where Bruce reconnects with his father backstage, I received the devastating news that my house had burned in the Palisades fire, along with so many others. My wife and daughters, Ava and Stella, and our pups had raced to a hotel. Bruce comes to set. He realizes what's happened. And he says to me, "Scott, get the family out of the hotel, put them in my house." And we lived there until we got on our feet. My daughter Stella's guitar burned along with everything else we had in the fire. And what does Bruce do? He replaces her guitar with one of his. And that's who Bruce Springsteen is. That's the side of Bruce Springsteen that most people don't know. A man of incredible grace and support and humility. And While it's been the most challenging time of my life, it's also been, which is what life is about, I suppose, has been one of the most rewarding. Well, I realize that everybody needs a John Landau in their life. This is the central relationship of the film is between Bruce Springsteen and his longtime manager, collaborator, therapist, father figure, John Landau. And there's no relationship like it in all of music. They've been together for 50 years. Bruce trusts John with the largest decisions he has to make. And to see them, whether it would be on set together, whether it would be when I first met them at the shore in New Jersey, backstage in Barcelona, backstage in Los Angeles at the Forum, or just having dinner, it's a sight to behold. Sometimes, much is expressed through the silence. But John's incredibly wise, has given me a great deal of personal guidance through the challenges that I've dealt with and that we've just discussed, but also artistic. These two men have, they've changed my life. Well, when you make a film about Bruce Springsteen, you make a film about America's soul. And that includes everything you just discussed. Driving on open roads, landscapes, people who live on the margins, working class, people who are struggling, people who are reaching for the American dream and falling short. This is what Bruce has been writing about for 50 years. And if you're going to make a film about Bruce Springsteen, those things need to be included in ways that hopefully are subtle, but that when they add up, cumulatively, you think, even though this is just a very narrow time frame in Bruce's life, a very short time in Bruce's life, I know who Bruce Springsteen is.
Hard question. What's your favorite Bruce song?
Right now, because I'm feeling kind of nostalgic, I have been listening to Jungle Land a lot again, because it's kind of like that's one from I think that was probably my first favorite Bruce song, and it's nice to go back there.
I would say at the moment, currently, and it has been for a long time, is My Father's House, which is on Nebraska. Much of Nebraska, Bruce is writing about other people, convicts, outlaws, people who live on the margins like we just discussed. But it's during My Father's House that Bruce looks inward. It's a man searching for connection with his father that we see in the film. His dad's emotionally cold and distant. Searches for his father, and he finds silence and locked doors. And when he arrives at his father's house, it's now occupied by a stranger. That's Bruce Springsteen.
The one that stuck with me the longest, Reason to Believe. Yeah, I love that one.